Blue Sun Museum of Solar Cooking, based in Minneapolis. I'm here in beautiful Temple, Texas. Sun, pretty good sun today. A few clouds there that might threaten a little bit, but we're going to try to do some cooking here with Matt West, who is moderator of the Solar Cookers Worldwide Facebook group, and also is one of the biggest DIY cooker makers that I know of on the Solar Cooking Facebook groups. And today we're going to look at a whole bunch of his contraptions, which all do so well. And you could learn how to make your cookers for very inexpensive from stuff that he's put together. But I just have three questions whenever I do these, and then it's open-ended really. And the first one is, how did you discover solar energy, and specifically solar cooking, but all the way back to solar energy, even if it's as a kid?
Well, the first thing I ever saw was someone had made a cone out of aluminum foil and like a coat hanger wire going up the middle, and they stuck a weenie on it, and just this little bit of sun was making that hot dog sizzle all the way around, and I was just blown away. It was the first time I'd ever seen anybody cook anything. I was just a little kid. I'm 1976, so at a Boy Scout event. So that idea just never left me. And then many years later, I went to Temple College over here, and we did a little pizza box experiment. And I thought, this is great, but gosh, the possibilities are so much broader than a little pizza box, you know. And within a short time after that, I felt at the dash of my pickup truck, and it was so hot that it really surprised me, because the cab of the vehicle was quite hot, but the dash was particularly hot. I put a thermometer up there, and the needle went to 140, and I said, wow, 140. And I really didn't know much about cooking. I'd ruined a lot of food in my life.
That's all we learned.
That I had to eat anyway, you know, to pick off the burnt part.
Sure.
So I started thinking, I want to make a solar oven. And I had this old gas grill, because I lived at an RV park, and there was always something being left by the dumpster, you know. And I turned this gas grill into a cooker. I recycled the top, big old aluminum cooker. And I still have the rest of it. We'll look at that in a little while. But it was no time at all. I put reflector material in it, like the bubble wrap type, mirror bubble wrap type reflector in it. And I started by cooking boiled eggs and then chicken, and I realized I needed all black cookware, and I painted 2 little baking pans, little muffin pans, you know, like banana bread type pans, and I painted them both black, and I stacked them on top of each other and put clips on it and cook. I was blown away by how well it would just destroy some chicken, you know, cook it so well you could pull the bones right out. And people would say, you left it outside all day and you're eating it? I said, well, yes, I left it outside all day, and I'm eating it. Notice how the bones pull out, you know.
It's cooked.
It's cooked. I mean, I have relied on that sort of evidence for my cooking rather than extensive calculations and scientific.
Oven thermometer here and there, but that's about it.
Yeah, very, very little as far as, like, I just recently purchased a electronic thermometer that has a magnet on the back, and you can push the button and poke it into something, and it'll tell you how hot it is internally. But overall, no matter what, I rely on the results. Yeah.
Yeah.
That hot dash, I put a thermometer on it, and it is one of these little thermometers that's about yay big, and it had a humidity and temperature on it. It went to 140, and I took a little shaving mirror and put it next to that, behind the glass, with the thermometer on the dashboard, and it just pegged it. So, and it started melting the case. It started deforming.
Sure.
So I said, what could you do with that much heat, you know? Since then I've learned a lot about cooking, and it also taught me that I've been cooking things too fast. And since then I've learned you can make some perfect bacon in 3 hours if you don't mind cooking slowly. And then of course someone will come along when you post about it, like in Solar Cooking Worldwide, you post about it, and someone says, well, I want bacon when I want bacon. I want it in the morning. I said, well, you know, you could cook enough for the next day too. And then just warm it up if you must have it hot, you know. So there's always going to be somebody, as soon as you do something you think is marvelous, spectacular, unbelievable, somebody takes you down a notch, you know, by saying, well, who wants bacon in the afternoon, or whatever, you know. So I just ignore that. I try not to even comment on some of those, because the explanation just isn't worth it, you know.
People's expectations are coming from the modern kitchen.
Yeah.
With the gas that's instant, the electricity, which is, you know, a minute or two when you got that hot plate thing, the microwave, boom.
That's it. So I've cooked sort of that way a lot of times.
Sure.
You know? So one thing I've done is I made brisket, which is notoriously hard to get tender.
Yeah.
If you don't follow the exact steps
There you go.
and keep it low and slow, like 225. So what I've done is I would smoke a brisket, and I've done it different ways to where I knew the brisket wasn't fully cooked, but it had smoke flavor on it. So I chopped it up and put it in jars. Put the lid on, set it in the solar oven all day, and it turns out to be more tender and juicy, like you wouldn't believe. This awesome au jus comes off of it.
Yes.
And if it's still not tender enough, I put it back in the solar oven. And eventually it is just mushy tender.
Yeah.
So solar cooking has taught me a lot about that, and I learned a lot of my cooking skills from watching barbecue shows on PBS.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, it makes sense once you accept it. You know, sometimes we hear an idea and we want to find a quicker way or something, and it's not always the best. You know, so that's kind of how I got into solar cooking, was by just realizing that once you isolated things from the atmosphere, you have a different situation than you do in normal life, where you have wind. You don't realize, like right now, there's wind.
Yes.
You hardly notice it. There's a little bit of wind. That's going to go on for a moment.
Okay.
So we'll plan an edit right
Sure,
here.
sure. Oh, yeah, that's
Unless you
good.
want to leave it in there. I live awfully close to some train tracks.
I leave in the ambient noise, because that's where we're here. We're in the here and now.
One of the very first things that ever happened to me that maybe opened my eyes to solar cooking was, I used to have a box when I was a very small boy, like 6 years old. I had a box of Crayolas.
Okay.
And set them in the back window of the car.
Oh, you got a rainbow pattern.
Sure did.
Puddled across.
Mom was not happy about that, but it did let me know that things will melt quickly. Another thing I've figured, and I'm surprised it's not more popular, is candle making.
Yeah.
How could you come up with a safer way to make a candle than to just use your dashboard or anything? Because a candle will melt if I leave it in this RV here. It'll sit there and start deforming, at least.
I often see people posting. So I also use it for candle making, or bees,
Sure.
welting bees, the honeycomb.
Yeah.
Or making honey, getting the honey out every last drip
Getting the
before
crystals out.
Yeah.
I've done that with it. Yeah. On the
but
dash.
But almost never do they post, here's the video or the photos
no,
of it. So
yeah.
no, they want to cut. Everyone wants to know about cooking. No, we want to learn about the other stuff.
It's not just about cooking. It's about saving the planet. It's about helping people. It's about saving money. To me, solar cooking is freedom. from the nickel and diming of everyone in the world over a bottle of fuel or a bucket of coal, you know,
Exactly.
or cutting down trees that could have been left standing. So it's about saving people from cooking in a smoky little shack and getting lung problems. It's about women being attacked while they're trying to collect firewood. It's about saving people from all that. And it's not just about coming up with an idea that's going to make a lot of money, because I'm probably going to do that anyway. But even then, if I made enough money, I want to do something good with the money.
Yeah, well, that pretty much covers the first question I always have. The second one just simply is like right now, just maybe kind of list some of the things you've got going, which we'll get to. We will turn off the cameras and go to each one at a time. But you know, where are you now? How many of these contraptions do you have? And yeah,
Well, if you count that dish that I just covered with strips,
sure.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Solid.
Yeah.
I hadn't even stopped to count them myself because there's a couple new ones.
Yep. And they're all repurposed materials.
Repurposed.
This is not, well, I'm going to find this on eBay, or some of them, most of it, it's not even, well, I went to a junkyard or I went to Home Depot to get this because that'll fit. The stuff you found or that, or that you had already.
Well, the parabolic dish over here, that the cart it's attached to used to be a barbecue grill cart. And the dish, I just found it. Only thing I spent any money on were the clamps and the sticker material.
Sure.
So that and this other one is made out of a storage tub and reflectors, and another one is made from car window windshield reflectors, and a big bucket that when you buy a tree it comes in a large bucket. That's what that is. It's a flower pot tree. And the other two, one was a gas grill, and it's originally in life, and I decided to put some insulation on the outside of it. It doesn't look, my cookers don't look flashy, but they are effective.
Useful.
And the other one is one of those ordinary, more or less square with round corners barbecue grills, and I wish I had saved the top, because I could have made a sandwich and insulated in between it. So I will do that eventually. I just have to buy a new one.
Sure.
So it just has a glass window on it, and it's a square window on a radius corner thing, so there's a lot of air gets out of it, but it still gets hot enough in there to make bacon, to cook a steak. It's unbelievably effective as is. And I really haven't relied on mirrors ever, because like my biggest cooker used to be a freezer, so it's 6 feet nearly, or 5 feet of capture area by nearly 3 feet, and deep and black everywhere. It used to be white, metal walls. So it catches so much sunshine, I don't have trouble getting up to 200, 250, and you can cook a lot of things at those temperatures. You can even cook bacon at that temperature. It's just going to take a while, and you're not going to burn it. If you leave it in there all day, it might be more dry and crunchy than you want it to be, but it's not going to be burned.
Well, and you've got a background in design, and what you talked about, especially with the repurposing, is form follows function, right? That's the first thing to know about putting something together. If the form is looking really beautiful, gorgeous, it might not be the right function. And you've discovered stuff that, hey, it's we call it on some of the Facebooks having solaritis, where we look at something, can we make a solar cooker out of that? You've done it.
I've been in that conversation. Absolutely. Now I start seeing like garbage cans as something that can be turned into a solar oven. Maybe you cut the top off and make a little flower, and they should look like flowers.
Yeah.
Open up to the sun with the center point. Or another design I want to work on would be like 10 feet long, and it's a trough, and you have cooker assembly within this whole trough. something I've been thinking about,
Yeah.
possibly doing with a trailer,
Yeah. Yeah.
for especially for demonstrations.
Sure. And maybe we'll get a before picture of the trailer. You know, the solar.
Be.
What'd you call it? The solar station.
The Solar Express.
Solar Express. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which is kind of, like the Polar Express.
Yeah. Well, and then the last question is always, where do you see the future, and what are your thoughts for bringing it out there to people? What should people do to promote solar cooking?
Well, if I had anything to say about it, nearly every south wall on this part of the world would have a solar cooker hanging on the wall, or a fence, or something off the ground, convenient, at a normal height, nice looking, and possibly a window unit that you just put in as quick as you put in a little window unit air conditioner. So you screw that to the window frame and you fix it so that nobody can just yank it off or whatever, and so it's not a break-in risk.
Sure.
But you would just walk over to it, open one or two doors, put your food in a capsule or whatever. The encapsulation is best because the sides don't get hot, and the oven itself doesn't get hot. So you could also do one with and people have done it. I thought of it, but apparently we thought of it about the same time or whatever. But the window unit solar oven could become very popular someday. And it's also the sort of thing where it could be a window unit, or it could be on a little cart. So the same gadget without the brackets is take it somewhere else, take it with you when you move, whatever. So I think that'll be a thing for construction workers and things like that. I think you'll eventually see something that's a lot like a toolbox for a truck. You open it up, and there's a mirror, park south. You put your frozen lunch in at break time, and at noon it might be ruined already if your solar oven works too well. So that's another thing. Like if you try to cook broccoli in a solar oven, you better be ready to check on it frequently, unless you like your broccoli light green.
Yes.
So if you like it Asian style, it's not going to need to be in there very long. And plus, you can also do things like, if you're going to cook on a ceramic plate or bowl, preheat it if you want to speed up things. Like you want to make shrimp. I've made shrimp several times on my dashboard, just with a black plate.
Sure.
Let them, and well, only once did I remember to preheat the plate.
It doesn't matter. It could just cook a little long.
Since it turns pink, I'm eating.
Yes.
You know?
It's good.
Fish, if it turns flaky, I'm eating.
Yeah.
So that's how I cook. I don't rely on expensive thermometers to poke into it, and a lot of documentation and so on. I just know.
Yeah. When you've got the solar cookers worldwide on the Facebook, over 700, I think last I looked, people that are on it, and I check all of them, and there's always some chatter, some posts, and questions, and so that's one way to reach a lot of people, because people are figuring out, let's get onto these groups. There's other ones like Reddit and Instagram, and I don't think they're quite the utilitarianism. You can do Facebook groups a lot easier, and it's all there. I think it's easier to find stuff. It's easier to carry on a conversation, and so forth. So that's a plus.
Yeah, on Solar Cooking Worldwide, we have a lot more viewers than posters and members. Mm-hmm. Not that many people are actually doing solar cooking experiments. We get a lot of people who want every little thing explained to them. Well, that's why we're making videos and stuff right now, so that if you just watch the video and then you still have questions,
great,
I might have something for you.
Yeah.
And another thing I've gotten into is accidental canning. Some people are going to say, you can't call that canning, and I'm going to go ahead and call it canning because I have no other word for what it is. Just because we haven't proven it doesn't mean it's not a thing. So one day I was cooking beans or potatoes or something, and I don't know if I went away or whatever. I went away from the oven for a long time and came back, and the food was cool in a jar, and the button had gone down, and it was down for the count. So I've done a lot of little experiments that way, and I don't sanitize the jars. I rely on I clean them with soap and water, but I count on hours of intense sunlight to kill germs, the heat itself, and the steam within a sealed container. If there's enough steam to push pressure out the lip, out the edges, there must be, or that
That's
jars
why they're made.
would explode.
Yeah.
Then that's got to be a good thing. So I have some jars to show you, and I was going to give you some if you want them. I have a jar of water that's been closed since 2016, and peanuts that have been in a little jar for about 3 years, 2 or 3 years. The pandemic throws off my
That's very cool.
calculations. So, and I don't always remember to write on them. I should. But, so I even have some pinto beans that have been canned since 2016. And another jar where the button came up, but they look okay. So I'm not going to even consider eating them. But I would consider eating the other ones.
Sure.
Just, especially reheat them and eat them.
Yeah.
Get real hot, like boil them, because I'm scared. No, I'm sure they're probably okay. You know, and you think about people in a desperate situation. I'm not going to tell them they can't save water that way. I'm going to tell them do save water that way, because if I have a pan of water out for the birds, it turns green pretty fast.
Yeah.
This water in this jar still looks like the day it went in there, and the button's still down. So that's good enough for me. And if somebody wants to try the experiment and prove it's wrong, that'd be beautiful. Fine. If somebody, otherwise, I'm calling it canon.
Yes.
But now I would keep in mind that you don't want to use a lid over and over and over. The little, whatever the seal is made of, will eventually harden up or crack or whatever it does.
Yeah. Well, great. This is I think that's perfect for an introduction.
Yeah.
So I'll turn off the cameras and I'll move them to whichever we want to do next.
I think it's time to get the steaks going.
Sure.
And I have shrimp too. Shrimp we could cook 3 o'clock with these cookers.
Yeah, yeah.
That's one thing I love so much about reflector capsule cooking. And I'm going to call it encapsulation, or I could call it what is it? Chamber. Make a, but still it's more than a chamber. It's like a double black and clear chamber, or black and clear encapsulation. So we're working on the technical language to go with it. We just like what it does.
Yes, yes, and you'll be describing that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I found out the hard way, the best way. I wanted to wipe the bird business off.
Oh, that's one of the hazards of solar cooking. You want to keep stuff out as much as possible. And the birds are going to be outside too.
We love the birds.
The birds are fine.
Bird dookie.
They're necessary.
Never hurt anybody. I'm just trying to decide how to cook this. And
okay.
part of the fun is just figuring out.
Yep.
To me, I like a puzzle. I've always been the patient one.
Mm-hmm.
I love the way the potatoes turn out when you're cooking this way. They're just so soft. And plus, you cooked them in the same jar. If you don't finish them, you can stick them in the fridge.
Yep.
And put it right back in the solar oven again. What else? There's something else. Oh, a lot of times you can just leave the damn jar in there overnight.
Yeah.
And nothing's going to get in it. I think it's just not real to me until somebody shows up.
What do you think? Talk about that cooker?
Just about.
Okay.
I'm not finished cleaning.
Okay.
I want to leave this stuff out here just a moment. That's going to need it.
Okay.
Well, that's not how you do it. Probably just put it on space. I like to keep it simple. therefore successful. There we go.
So we are cooking steak and mushrooms in what? What is the history behind this cooker?
I inherited this cooker. I can't remember if I paid $10 for it or what, but somebody had only cooked in it like one time and said, "Hey, you want this?" I said, "Yeah, I think I could turn that into a solar oven." So this is really in its crudest form right now. This doesn't fit right. It still has corners that leak air, but it gets so hot in this little space, it'll cook bacon. Right now there's 2 ribeye steaks and a bunch of mushrooms in a pan cooking there. And if I wanted to increase the heat on the mushrooms, I might cover it with a black pan of some kind. And then, but the steaks now, they're so dark, I want them to absorb sunshine until you can see the sun is beginning to sear the steak. So this cooker, I made it a few years ago. Just hadn't used it much because I didn't have a whole lot of confidence in what it could do compared to my other cookers. But I'm finding it very useful. It has no insulation. There's even a few holes in it. There's a few holes that were for a rack where they stuck out a little bit to catch a rack. I hammered them shut. There's still 2 holes there. There's a big old sliding vent right here.
Oh,
but it still works. All we're doing is catching this much heat and this much sunlight. The black walls that it already had are heating up tremendously. If you touch the bottom, it's quite hot.
Oh, yeah.
Ideally it would be insulated, but ideally isn't always what you need. It might even cook a pastry. I've cooked some cookies in it, but I always overcook the cookies no matter what. It's hard to tell when they're done.
Yeah.
So
well, that's a testament to the power.
it is.
So you can't overcook, even in a just simple, in every piece here.
Yeah.
Repurposed.
Yeah.
You didn't run out to Walmart, you didn't run out to
No.
Home Depot, you didn't.
I made a framer, a little sign, and she made this. I wish it was aluminum, you know, but whatever.
Yeah.
I'll get there. You know, I'll get another lid. I'll put a hinge on it.
Sure.
So, but for now, unbelievably, toss a window thing on top of a barbecue, you're cooking.
Yeah.
It's that simple. But now the world is also, to me, yearning for a serious backyard solar cooker.
Sure.
And it's going to be like a gas grill. And it's going to, for people who want to spoil themselves, or you just want one that's going to last a lifetime. You get it made out of aluminum or stainless steel, and for the most part, things that don't rust. It's supposed to be 100 degrees today.
Yeah, I heard. I
right
saw
here.
the
So
forecast.
I'm a little sweaty.
Yes.
But anyway, condensation is on this top right here, but we can see that there's definitely some changing happening to these steaks.
Yep.
So now people in Texas, I'm from Oklahoma, but I'm living in Texas, and people in Texas will eat as nearly raw steak sometimes. They literally throw it on a scorching red hot grill, 20 seconds, flip it over, it's time to eat.
Serve.
Yeah. So but this cooker has a lot of potential, and there's nothing keeping anybody from, like, whoever makes these grills, whether it's in China or over here, or they're missing a market. They could use half the metal for not even use the tops, and then put a hinged glass top on it that's made to fit better. And they could like put hooks and racks on it, and even a cabinet down here for pots and pans or whatever. So it could be a very deluxe thing, very simply, very easily, and cost to manufacture $30. Selling price $300. You know, it's kind of the way these things work. I'd rather have that than a fold-up toy,
Right.
personally.
Something
Or
that'll
I'd
last. And
like one of these that folded up enough to just put in the car. But here's one that folds up.
sure.
And I may even turn that into a solar oven eventually.
One quick question is, I mean, modification, just instead of having the top have the glass.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's not like you're putting aluminum foil inside. You don't
Yeah.
need, if you don't need it.
No.
I mean, the modifications are virtually nothing.
Nothing.
Yeah.
Virtually nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's some company doesn't know they're in a position to make a lot of money since they already produce these
Yep.
cookers. They just need a glass shop added on to that, and
Sure.
they save the tops. Or you could turn the top over, put it in there, and insulate in between. So that's going to happen. Somebody's going to do that. It should be me. That's my money. Whoever does that.
It'll be a hybrid charcoal, barbecue, and solar.
I don't know about charcoal. With insulation, you might have to say goodbye to the
Yeah.
charcoal, unless you have some unbelievably fire-resistant
Sure.
insulation that doesn't hurt people. I heard once that soil was the greatest insulator.
It's as good as just about as good as anything else.
The greatest natural insulator.
Yeah.
So you have this much room,
You got nothing else. in
that
the
much
dirt?
room, packed in tight.
Yep.
You could retain a lot of heat. So that's about the size of this one, and I'm going to start cooking some shrimp here in a little while. And this thing, I'm preheating butter over here.
You want to talk about this one now?
Well, this is my latest. I was going to make a reflector cooker like you see a lot of people using, and they use encapsulated chambers, which, another way to put that is black glass inside a clear glass, or black metal inside a clear glass, whatever, it doesn't really matter. Doesn't even really, depending on the results you're trying to get, none of it even has to be glass. It's still going to get very hot. But the first thing I did was cook some chicken with this thing in a big glass salad bowl, in a ceramic bowl. In between that, a glass lid on top of the ceramic bowl. They all happen to fit together nicely. So within that chamber encapsulation, whatever you want to call it, the chicken was overcooked to the point that it started browning and crisping on top, because the sunlight was able to get through the glass and do that with a lid that didn't fit perfectly either. If it was pressure cooked, it'd be different, because I did cook 8 pieces of chicken in a pickle jar, and it turned out to have a reddish color like the blood had stained the meat, because there was no way for drainage to occur. But it was just fine. I used it to make curry. And yesterday, 2 days ago, I made rice in this thing much the same way. I took the little container out of my rice cooker. It's a small rice cooker, and this lid I've been saving forever. I didn't have anything that it fit. Turns out it fits that. So I took the knob off, because you're going to melt the knob, and then you have to have a little way of picking up the knob. So I used a chopstick. I use chopsticks for everything. So I can pick up the lid, inspect it, and the rice was perfect, fluffy basmati rice. But this thing has been just wonderful, and I've been thinking about making some more modifications to it that are easier to show you than to talk about. So hopefully Luther will come back, or I'll see you sometime, Luther.
Yeah.
And we can talk about how that turned out. Because for me, every solar cooking gadget should resemble some sort of flower opening up to the sun. And so many kinds of flowers, it's hard to argue with that. I put a wire around it to keep it from flopping, and it has given me no trouble. I haven't put it away at night. I let it get rained on. Doesn't seem to affect it enough to bother me. Eventually, I suppose I'll probably have to get a couple of new windshield reflectors. But okay, I don't mind doing that. Wow, I wish I could see through that condensation. That tells me that there's a lot of moisture coming out of the butter. And there's butter on the mushrooms. There's moisture in the steaks. I can definitely see some, maybe some browning. It might also be spices.
I think it is browning under
Yeah.
the under the
Oh,
spices,
it's hot as, it's very, very hot.
Yep.
That is 2 aluminum grill grates. Well, like, you know, George Foreman type cookers.
Sure.
Um, catching heat and spreading it out and cooking those steaks.
Yeah.
This cooker here was my very first permanent solar cooking experiment. It was a gas grill and the top came up to about here. It was aluminum, thick aluminum. I recycled it. You would lift up the lid and a little small thing would, grill grate would come up and there'd be a big grill grate. But anyway, lady at the flea market gave me this window when I told her I wanted to make a solar cooker, and it's too big. So I put this piece of wood back here, screwed it through, and put this piano hinge on it, and it has just made a wonderful cooker. For a long time I just had, like you see here, garden hose for cushioning. Then most recently I put this hose insulation on the edge of it, and that seems to really do a better job of sealing it up. The ideal situation is you don't have leaks. On the other hand, you maybe can work with leaks. Here's a little leak here, here's a little leak here, and this whole back edge is leaking. It still makes plenty of heat. What do you cook with, black walls? Right now, just recently I put shiny walls back in it because I've been doing a lot more of this pressurized cooking. What I have here is a very hot jar of coffee for Luther or me, but I wanted to do some experiments and I could see that I didn't need an expensive cooker. And being the handy inventor kind of person I am, I just couldn't live with the shame of paying somebody else for a cooker. I had to make it myself. So this has come in very handy. One of the first things I ever did was boil some eggs. And I started out by originally putting reflectors in it like it has now. And for a long time I cooked with it less successfully with just black walls. So this thing really, this bubble wrap insulation material is probably helping it retain some warmth, or at least keeping it from cooling. And then the sides here are just insulation taped on. It really needs to be redone, but it's still quite effective. I've had a lot of luck cooking with this thing. Right now I'm cooking potatoes and onions in this jar, and I cinch the lids down. I no longer poke holes in the lids. I thought I needed to in the beginning, and I might even have made a statement like you have to, but no, you don't have to. As a matter of fact, you might not like the results as much if you poke holes in the lids. You might, if you wanted to cook dry beans, then maybe you're going to need a little bit of pressure to speed up the process.
That thing going?
Hey,
All right.
Luther.
Hey, fancy meeting you here.
Yeah.
So we got a whole nother cooker here, and this is one, honestly, I don't think I've ever seen this configuration before.
I think I'm the first.
Yeah, and but the inside is really what we're going to want to get after. So start talking about it. I'll grab the other cameras so we can get some inside shots there.
Well, so this is just an ordinary storage tub. And I had recently made the other cooker with car window reflectors, shades, whatever you want to call them. And it worked so well, I thought, well, what else could I use? A trunk, a tub, a $10 kiddie pool. They're only this, you know, like little bitty things. And lots of other stuff. So I just went and bought a roll of this insulation from the Lowe's Home Improvement store. And I bought the biggest cookie jar I could get my hands on. It's a 2-gallon cookie jar. So the way this works is you put a black container inside of a clear container, and it's not sealed perfectly, but it's not exactly leaky either. So there's a dead space of insulation going on here, working with the I call it encapsulation or chamber cooking. I'm not sure what to call it yet, but me and a bunch of other people have stumbled across it. I can tell by looking at what they see. The first thing I ever did with that idea was I painted a soda can black and put it inside of a ball, like a 1-pint jar. And the can was too tall, so I put foil over it and screwed the lid down, and there was water in between. I don't remember why I put water in there, except that I wanted maybe to use the water to heat the can. But what really worked about it is that if you paint the jar black and put it on a parabolic cooker, it just shatters it very quickly. I've broken a few jars that way. However, if you put a black thing inside of a clear thing and then put it in the parabolic sunlight capture area, projection area, whatever you call that, it created a rolling boil. And this was about 2007. And so it was all just like little copper wire around the neck of it, and it's hanging from the arm of the parabolic. So that's how I started container in a container cooking. I don't know if anybody had done it before then, but that was my first foray into it. One thing I did was I painted a coffee can black to make a heat exchanger sort of thing. And I painted a pickle jar black with a clear stripe so you could look inside. But I think that it's my idea that the coffee can inside there is catching a whole lot of sunlight and making a whole lot of heat, and another little dead space between it and the black jar.
Sure.
And it doesn't seem to be hurting at all. If anything, I think it's doing good. If I try to touch it, I'll tell you how long I can hold my hand on it. Ow!
Yeah, there we go. Yeah,
That's pretty hot. So I would say that's maybe close to 300 degrees. And it has coffee in it. The coffee's been in there since this morning. So by now I'm sure it's very cooked. You don't have a problem with overcooking though. It seems like, to me anyway, that the coffee is just smooth as can be, and I put enough in there that it's going to be kind of like an espresso in the density of the coffee.
Sure.
So even if the paint job is spotty on the jar, the coffee, once it starts turning dark, is going to help its own cooking. Because black is beautiful in solar cooking, and in people too. So this thing is piping hot right now, and if I left it, as long as I keep the sun on it, I can still drink hot coffee a couple hours after the sun goes down. So this is thermal cooking, pressure cooking at the same time. And it's something I want people to think about when you're solar cooking. I think about thermal cooking, because thermal cooking, it's just a wonderful thing. When I first heard about hay boxes, I cooked a pot of beans on a fire outside on a charcoal grill, but I only got them boiling, and then I put them in the hay box, which was just grass clippings that had dried out. I put them in the put the pot in the hay box and sealed it up and put towels on top. I made sure I could feel no heat getting away, and I just left it alone. And way after dark, they were still very hot and completely cooked.
Sure.
So it doesn't take a pile of wood to cook something. It only takes a little bit, as long as you retain that heat. The way I solar cook is mostly set it and forget it. So this, I've only turned it about 4 or 5 times today, and that's more than I usually turn it. I'm also gonna I'm planning on making some modifications to this thing to open it up like a flower. Now it's a little bit like a closed flower, which limits it, but it's still doing remarkable things. And as long as you're especially encapsulating, so it could be an iron skillet, but you need something
clear like a pie pan that fits that iron skillet. And it doesn't have to fit perfectly. It can be leaky as long as you stop the flow of cooling air. Anyway, this handy cooker, I don't really have a name for it. It's a storage tub cooker. This piece, this is just some of that material that you get for insulating ducts at your home center, or wherever you can come by it. Now, I have a lot of plans. I want to make a canoe cooker. You know,
Sure.
it's like those little, when you go to the Chinese restaurant and they have that beautiful sesame green stuff on top of rice in that little thing. Well, yeah, you could make a cooker kind of like this, especially if it was long and had separators so that a big portion of it was just a straight channel. So the stuff comes in like a 30-foot roll or longer, so you could make a really long cooker and set like a basket, wire baskets in it or whatever, and set pots on top of that and not even move it as long as you have it pointed east and west. The sun's going to move across it and cook them all at the same time, and you have a window. So if the sun came up kind of over here by my shoulder, which is how it is here where I'm standing, and it goes down and kind of over here on this shoulder this time of year, sun would hit that, you wouldn't even aim it all day long. You just keep it pretty much, in the 11 o'clock to 5 o'clock range, because it'll just keep on cooking. You could do a lot of cooking. You could change out dishes as they're done.
The mega cooker. And what do you call this again?
It is nothing but an old freezer
Okay.
with metal walls. It was a commercial freezer. Someone gave it to me, and for a long time I cooked in it with nothing but racks and white light bouncing off the walls. It catches so much sun that I've never needed mirrors.
Yeah.
I cook a lot of things in here. Another thing I've started doing a few years ago is cooking in these ammunition cans, because inside here is a high quality silicone seal. And this one is, a good one will work like a pressure cooker. So you put a jar of food in there and cinch the lid down tightly. No hole in the lid. Put it in the ammo can, a few jars, and let it sit in here all day. It will expand the sides of the box. And then when letting pressure out, at the end of the day, it'll suck them in so hard you have to use a screwdriver to open the box. Because normally, they open very easily. And somebody said something like, why is the box made so well? Well, if it's ammunition, it might mean your life or other people's lives.
Yeah.
So you get these at the surplus store.
Sure.
And you can buy them at Harbor Freight. But for the most part, I started out just boiling eggs with white walls. I painted all my cookware black and made a bunch of, cooked a bunch of chicken, dried a bunch of meat, cooked a bunch of meats. And then finally my buddy kept saying, you gotta paint the insides black. So for years it's been painted black inside, and I've done just a lot of cooking. Years of cooking.
And where did you find it?
An old friend of mine said, hey, my dad's freezer or something like that quit working. It's a commercial freezer, vertical. It stood on feet.
Yeah.
So that's it. You just need to find a freezer with big metal walls. The ultimate instant right now solar oven would be one of those cola boxes they have by the cash register.
Sure.
If the walls are made of metal. If they're not, you could cover them in metal quick enough.
Yeah. Or a little bit of surgery, take out the plastic, line it with the flashing or something, huh?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
the large capture area made it so I never wanted mirrors.
Yeah.
It gets up to 250, 260 is the highest I've ever seen it go, with no mirrors.
So all I'm doing is, and the walls are insulated, all I'm doing is isolating this space from the atmosphere's effects of cooling and what have you.
Sure.
Letting the sun do its thing. I've even used a roasting pan to cook many gallons of peanuts, many pounds of raw peanuts, which people are they just love them. They turn out so well that you leave them in there for days in a roasted pan. Now I could probably accelerate the cook process by making a tighter capsule or something like that. If you think about square foot boxes, about 30 of them would go in there. One of the best things about this is you can put a whole bunch of jars of food in it and cook for people.
Yeah.
Pressurized jars that you don't put a hole in the lid. And it's one of my favorite things is to cook red potatoes with some onion and spices and butter and cinch the lid down, put it in there, and they come out just beautiful. Surprising.
Yeah.
But that's the biggest solar oven I've ever seen. It's just so effective and so easy. The worst part is I need to counterbalance the lid because it's heavy. I almost broke my arm with this lid here. Used to be an RV patio door. And most RVs don't have patio doors, but I came across one. Put them together. I used this piece of wood to compensate for the size difference. Piano hinge on the back, and I was cooking like right away. I mean, throw it together. Sure. Kind of project. Don't overthink it, people.
So future plans for this? You mentioned reflectors, as in lining it with maybe one side where the sun would grab.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
There's still no mirrors on the outside, probably, because I'm not trying to get 800 degrees.
Yeah.
I mean, once you achieve the temperature you like to cook at, which is probably no more than 350, if you can cook 350, you're baking.
Yeah.
So, but also if you can get to 300, you're baking more slowly. That's all. Oh, of course, it's a dryer too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's a lot of things that for us it goes without saying.
Yeah.
But it maybe needs to be said for in case this is the first video somebody ever watches about solar cooking.
Yeah.
So there's no electricity, there's no solar panel, it just gets hot with sunshine.
Yeah.
But yeah, this has been the workhorse of my solar cooking. It's the second one I ever came up with. The first one was the gas grill solar cooker, and then the pieces came together, just found me for this, and I have used like a few screws, piano hinge, and I riveted some of it together because I didn't ever want to have to mess with it again.
Sure.
But and the piano hinge, there's like I had been RV living for a long time, so RVs have a lot of piano hinges in them for hedges and so on.
Yep.
And somebody's always tearing out part of their RV. They probably shouldn't.
Yeah.
But when they do, I collect the piano hinges. I used this oven for many years, since about 2007, without ever even having this on it. A little prop leg. So I hadn't really put any thought into it. I just lived with the heavy door. This door's kind of heavy. So if you're reaching in there, sometimes the food's kind of heavy and you need two hands. So I eventually stuck this little leg on there, and I made it in such a way that it catches on its own when you lift it with one hand. I have this old trailer. I'm thinking about putting it on and call it the Solar Express.
There we go.
And that because I would really want to demonstrate it to young people. That's how I got started.
Sure.
You know, somebody showed me a marvelous thing, a weenie cooking on a little wire, and I never forgot it. You know, it must have been 11, 12, and it just stuck with me forever.
Yep.
Until the internet came along, and you could see a lot more pictures. But at first, there weren't that many.
No.
If you went to Google and typed in solar oven, not much came up.
No.
Or solar cookbook, like 2 things came up.
So I just could see very easily, though, is particularly if you really just want to be the laziest solar cook in the world, frozen foods, frozen dinners.
Yeah.
Toss them in there, set them on your dash. That's the very easiest thing. The longest thing I've ever cooked is peanuts. I just leave them in there day after day and taste them. One more day might not hurt. The peanuts actually turn tan
Yep.
inside the shell. And the shells get darker and a prettier color.
Sure.
So I said this has been, I don't know, to me it wasn't ever anything particularly special. It was just the widest,
Yep.
deepest, biggest one. And why not?
Yeah.
Because I figure, you want to be a solar cook for real, or do you want to just play with it? You want a little toy you can warm up a pizza with? Okay. That's one thing, but if you want to live with a solar cooker,
Yep.
I recommend a big one and a reflector and a parabolic, a variety, because they all do different things.
Well, I know that it's not your goal, but what do you recall the most you've ever cooked just inside this one thing?
Oh yeah, like corn, potatoes, ribs, all in one day.
On one day?
Beans,
Yep.
peas, like green beans and black-eyed peas,
Yeah.
which are just being warmed up because they're canned. But nonetheless, I mean, if I wanted to feed maybe 10 people, if they're willing to eat what I'm cooking, I can make enough to fill them. There came a point for me very early on that I said, if I can make a bigger one and I have the stuff, I'm going to. And I quickly found out that I could do more cooking than I could eat. Einstein is kind of stretched out here.
Well,
Well,
this
thanks
is
so
great.
much.
This has been fantastic.
Thank you for coming,
You bet.
Luther. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, excellent.